Hopkins, they'll get Kiki Kute in the slot. We talked a little bit before the show with Ryan Reynolds, our waiver wire specialist, about how much we would bid on Kenny Stills. It obviously a lot depends on your roster, but if you need a wide receiver, I would not be afraid to break the bank for Kenny Stills right now. What do you think about his outlook, and what do you think about Kiki's outlook?
Yeah, hopefully other main event players in my league here are not listening to this, but we are anticipating putting a big bid on Kenny Stills. That's probably our weakest spot in first of all, we have Amari Cooper on bye this week, and then we've got like Sammy Watkins banged up, and Philip Dorsett is kind of shaky, and I don't know. We got Mike Evans coming back, and we got DJ Moore coming back, but off of buys. But we need another receiver, and I think that Kenny Stills is going to be a legit every week wide receiver 2 for as long as Will Fuller is out. And it sounds like this could be like a 3 to 6 week hamstring injury. And immediately Kenny Stills is going to be an awesome play against the Raiders. Raiders have allowed 32 completions of 20-plus yards so far this year. That's the most in the league. And then they just traded away Garyon Conley actually to the Texans, who they play in Week 8. And Garyon Conley, I mean, he hasn't been great in the Raiders system, but he's a super talented guy out of Ohio State. Actually played ahead of Marshawn Lattimore across from Denzel Ward in that Ohio State secondary, and he was just excellent. He's encountered a ton of really unfortunate situations early in his career and hasn't met expectations. But I kind of like that acquisition by the Texans. But Kenny Stills is going to be an every snap player. He's 94% of the snaps, ran 40 routes last week. And then Kiki Kute also gets a significant bump. I mean, he played 70% of the snaps after Will Fuller went out, ran 32 routes, a season high. The 3 receiver set now is going to be DeAndre Hopkins and Kenny Stills outside with Kiki Kute in the slot.
Yeah, certainly exciting there for both those guys. Let's move to the Indianapolis Colts. I don't think any big surprises from the Colts performance. I mean, just a really solid team. I have seen some people talking up Zach Pascal after his big game. I think it was a pretty big outlier for him. He only played 34 out of 73 snaps. I think Houston's defense is operating as a pretty reasonable funnel. Not as big as Oakland's funnel, which is forcing so much action through the air, but certainly a pretty big funnel. Houston is far better against the run, but I don't really have much interest in adding Zach Pascal. I don't know if you do.
No, yeah, I mean, it's just a big rotation behind T.Y. Hilton in that Indianapolis pass catcher core, even on down to the tight ends. Eric Ebron popped up for a big game last week, and Paris Campbell was out. That kind of helped Pascal, but you're right. I mean, he's still a rotational player, rotating time with Chester Rogers and a bunch of other guys, Deion Kane and a bunch of other guys. And I think that Jacoby Brissett has shown an affinity for throwing the ball to Zach Pascal when he's been in the game. But again, he's like a part-time player. But I think that we should give a lot of credit to Jacoby Brissett, who I think is getting better every game. And there's been some MVP talk about him. I don't know about that, but I think that he has played at a very, very high level. I think at a higher level than I anticipated for sure entering the season. And they continue to show more trust in him. He did have a low ADOT last week, but I mean, he's playing efficiently. He's not taking sacks. He's getting the ball out quickly. He's athletic. He's got a good arm. And when they're healthy, especially when T.Y. Hilton is healthy, this offense is pretty darn good.
Evan, we have breaking news. It is 2:50 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday, and we have a trade. Adam Schefter is reporting that Denver has dealt Emmanuel Sanders to the San Francisco 49ers in exchange for 3rd and 4th round draft picks in 2020. Denver also giving up a 2020 5th rounder. So Emmanuel Sanders has been traded to the San Francisco 49ers. Obviously, the San Francisco wideout situation has just been a disaster ever since the preseason when Dante Pettis fell behind the 8 ball and caught the ire of the coaches. Deebo Samuel has been hurt and I think hasn't made an impact. And obviously Denver needs to be sellers right now with Emmanuel Sanders coming up on free agency, and they do have Deshaun Hamilton. So we'll spend more time on San Francisco on that pod. Your first thoughts, though, on Denver playing without Emmanuel Sanders. Obviously, I think we're going to see Deshaun Hamilton become nearly an every down player.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that Deshaun Hamilton immediately becomes a pretty decent pickup in deeper PPR leagues. And then Cortland Sutton, like just he should remain the air yards dominator, really even to a greater extent because Deshaun Hamilton is an underneath receiver. He's going to be in the slot. So I think that Cortland Sutton also gets a bump in terms of air yards because Emmanuel Sanders was getting a decent number of air yards. I don't think that Deshaun Hamilton is going to be, grabbing a ton of those air yards. So good news for Cortland Sutton and Deshaun Hamilton. Maybe Noah Fant, but Noah Fant just needs to play better football. That's really been his big problem.
Yep. All right. We'll get the San Francisco side on the NFC pod. You can get Evan's take on the outlook in this immediate short term coming up in the matchups column once he gets to Denver. Let's go to Jacksonville. And I mean, yeah, really predictable. 31 touches for Leonard Fournette. No surprise there. I would note that they said they were starting Josh Oliver, but Josh Oliver only played on 25 out of 80 snaps. Seth DeValve played 47. So obviously Josh Oliver missing, the entire season, as Evan pointed out, hurt him. We'll see if Josh Oliver can gain some snaps going forward. But home against the Jets is a pretty good spot for Gardner Minshew and Lenny and all these guys. What do you see out of Jacksonville?
Yeah, and Dede Westbrook, he popped up for his first 100-yard game. He's averaging 9 targets over the last 5 weeks. His problem has just been low ADOT, just getting so many short targets. But this will be a good matchup for him, as well as DJ Shark, who I was really big on last week. He only had 4 targets, a season low. On the first drive, he stepped out of bounds at the 1-yard line, just backbreaking. He still did finish with 73 yards from scrimmage. He had 20 yards on a jet sweep, had 53 yards on his 4 targets. He also got tackled at the Bengals' 8-yard line after a 33-yard catch and run. So he was, kind of inches from a pretty big game. It just didn't happen for him. I think that going up against these terrible Jets perimeter corners, we could see a bounce back for him. Leonard Fournette, 31, 26, 27, 31 touches over his last 4 games. What a bell cow.
Yeah, such a beast. All right, let's get to the Chiefs here because the biggest injury, obviously, from a real life perspective this week was Patrick Mahomes going down. And I've seen timelines from 3 to 5 weeks Mahomes is going to miss. I've also seen Adam Schefter say that he could be back 3 weeks or sooner. It sounds like it's not as bad as they feared. I think they're going to exercise extreme caution, though. At least for the short term, they're going to be without Patrick Mahomes. I honestly think this offense can function reasonably with Matt Moore. Obviously, they're not going to have the same type of explosiveness, the same type of downfield plays, but Matt Moore has had a long week to get ready for this Sunday Night Football home game against the Packers. He's 35. It seemed like he was behind Chad Henne before Chad Henne got hurt in the preseason, but Matt Moore has had some productive games. They were a while ago, but he's had some productive games. I wonder if I'm being too optimistic on Matt Moore, Evan. How do you think this KC offense will function with him?
Yeah, I mean, the problem is that there's just so many dudes. There's so many guys. Like, there are 3 guys capable of getting touches week to week in the backfield. There are like 5 guys capable of getting targets in the receiver core. And then you got Travis Kelce, who was also a volume monster. So just everyone behind Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce is going to be kind of a dart throw from week to week. You're just like taking a chunk off the ceiling of the offense as a whole. Like, again, we can deal with situations like this when we're averaging 32 points per game with Patrick Mahomes. But now if we take our points expectation down to 23, then like we can't even play Mecole Hardman anymore because is that threat of a 70-yard touchdown really still there? I mean, it's sort of still there, but the probability has dropped, like it's been cut in half without Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, I mean, massively. I would note that Tyreek Hill did come back and look like he was fully healthy in that Thursday night game. He was up at 53 of 61 snaps in that first game back against Houston. He only played 28 out of 55 snaps. So, I still have some hope for Tyreek Hill, but I agree, obviously. I mean, the ceiling has just been absolutely lopped off, and they're going to have to do some different things on offense that won't be nearly as vertical. The Los Angeles Chargers, there are Melvin Gordon trade rumors. I don't want to harp too much on the disaster that their coaching has been and why they insist on using Melvin Gordon. It just is what it is. When Melvin Gordon's out there, they're gonna give the ball to Melvin Gordon a ton. And even though Austin Eckler just makes the offense so much more productive, but maybe we'll get a Melvin Gordon trade. So we'll see. Hunter Henry's role, man, just absolutely outrageous. I was worried about Hunter Henry in the game against the Titans, and he just goes out there, plays almost every snap, is in the slot or wide like 70% of the time. I mean, man, what an awesome usage and awesome talent for Hunter Henry. So yeah, I'd love to see them get rid of Melvin Gordon at the trade deadline, but overall, this defense is bad, and maybe that bodes somewhat well for Hunter Henry and Keenan and Mike Williams going forward.
Yeah, Hunter Henry, what a monster. Leads all NFL tight ends in targets, yards, and routes run since returning from his knee injury 2 games ago. Keenan Allen had a disappointing final box score, but he did have 11 targets and 209 air yards, which is the most of any wide receiver in Week 7. He still leads the NFL in air yards. He's gone through these kind of like 3 or 4 game slumps before in his career. But the usage is still very, very much there, and that's good news for him. Really, I don't even think it's necessarily an Austin Eckler versus Melvin Gordon debate. It is a coaching staff. It's a coaching staff problem. Like when your decisions are hurting your team, which every single touch to Melvin Gordon so far has hurt the team. And your response to that is to give him more touches. You deserve to lose. And that's exactly what they've done in 3 straight games. And in weeks 1 through 4, they averaged 23 points per game. They averaged 404 total yards per game offensively, and they've slid to 16.7 points per game and 320 total yards per game since Melvin Gordon returned. And I mean, I don't know. I could go on and on about this, and I'm just going to leave it at that. But their offensive line is in shambles. Everyone knows that, and so your response to that should not be, "Hey, let's bang Melvin Gordon between the tackles." It should be, "Hey, how do we reduce the impact of our bad offensive line on our offensive production?" And that's to try to circumvent that. And the way you do that is with passes to Austin Eckler.
Yeah, they're a bunch of donkeys for sure. It just is what it is at this point. The Miami Dolphins, I mean, Ryan Fitzpatrick goes up to Buffalo and plays surprisingly well. We'll see how long they can sustain that. They do get to play the Pittsburgh Steelers on Monday Night Football. What a game that will be. But yeah, Kenyon Drake's on the trade block. I mean, we've seen them play Mark Walton. We never spend too much time on the Dolphins because I think it's mostly irrelevant. But if Devontae Parker gets traded, if Kenyon Drake gets traded, maybe there's some room there, more room for Preston Williams, for Mark Walton. But overall, it's just a mess. Anything on the Dolphins?
No, we can move on to the next one.
All right. The New England Patriots made a trade, a surprising trade, I thought. I mean, is Mohamed Sanu really worth a 2nd-round pick? I mean, I know he went to Rutgers and all, but I was pretty surprised that they gave up a 2nd-round pick to get Mohamed Sanu. And then maybe it means that Josh Gordon's knee injury is worse than we anticipated. What do you think of the Mohamed Sanu trade, and how do you think that affects what they're doing?
Yeah, I mean, they have a ton of picks, like future picks, but this was a surprise that they gave up that much for Mohamed Sanu. Mike Lombardi, who worked for with Bill Belichick in Cleveland and in New England, was talking in the offseason how teams were trying to trade for Mohamed Sanu, and the Falcons wouldn't give him up for anything, or they wanted a 2 for him. But that was during the offseason, and now we see this happen before the trade line. Yes, a good move, I think, for Atlanta, and a surprising move by New England. But New England has receiver problems. I mean, Julian Edelman, he's awesome, but he's been playing through a rib injury. Josh Gordon has this knee injury that we still have no idea the extent of which and how long he's going to be out. Philip Dorsett has battled a hamstring injury. He's made the most of his opportunities, but he's been injured. Jacoby Myers has made the most of his opportunities, but he's an undrafted rookie. So I think that they felt like – I think that those rumors might have surfaced because Lombardi caught wind of the Patriots wanting Mohamed Sanu in the offseason, and now they execute that trade. So I think that they've been eyeing him. He's got this level of versatility that they love in their receivers. I'm not sure how to value him right now in fantasy because there are a lot of receivers there, and so much is going to depend on the injury statuses of these guys going forward. But I think he's worth adding in deeper leagues